Hey you guys, first of all I gotta apologize because it's been a while since I put a video out. I've just been slammed for the last few weeks with different projects and just kind of overwhelmed, so I didn't have the time to really sit down and do videos. So I'm going to try to correct that and make sure that I do stay consistent with my videos. Today I want to talk about sidechaining. And I've talked about sidechaining here and there in some of my other videos, but I think I'm going to do a series on sidechaining. So I'm going to call this part 1 because it's such a vast subject and it can be used in so many great ways. So I'm just going to show a couple of things that I do today, some of the basics that I do. And then as I move forward over the weeks, I'll probably pick out a couple of other important sidechaining topics that I want to share with you. So here we go. So the song I have up has a good example of using the kick drum to sidechain out certain elements. And I want to show you my approach to that and some of the elements that I do like to sidechain out almost in any production. You know, in dance music, we think of sidechaining as being used often in a very aggressive manner. That kick hits, everything pulls out at that moment. It's a great dramatic effect. But almost any song can benefit from some sidechaining when it comes to the kick. Remember, one of the things that you want to do, one of the concepts here is to get rid of information that is not useful in the ultimate full mix. You don't want a lot of low-end frequencies that aren't necessarily that audible, or you don't want a lot of buildup of frequencies at one point that are all sort of on top of each other in the same frequency range. That's really the concept with sidechaining using a kick. Often with a kick, what you do is every time that kick hits, you want to basically duck down certain sounds that are in a similar frequency range. So basses or other low synths are important to look at and consider that maybe they could be ducked down for that brief moment that that kick hits. There's other important things to consider too. Remember, when you have certain frequencies that are exactly the same, perfectly aligned, they can actually create some cancellation as well. You might find that at the end of your mix, you're not getting the punch and the tone that you want out of your kick or your bass. And it might be because there are some overlapping frequencies that are creating phase issues and canceling information out. All right, so let me show you my approach. I'll play a little bit of the chorus here, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the kick. Now, this is my first sort of mix on this. I haven't really gone back and gone through it, and I imagine that I'm going to tighten up some of the frequencies and such even more as I get closer in on this one. But as you hear it, it's got kind of a general sort of rhythmic groove underneath. It's a bit of an old school soul kind of sound. This is the kick that I'm using. Now, one of the things that I learned a long time ago was if I try to create a sidechain using my actual kick, there was all kind of anomalies and issues that I wasn't necessarily loving. What I do instead of using the actual kick to sidechain with is I create sort of a dummy track with my same kick. I call it a sidechain kick. This is what you're seeing down here. Now, this track is totally silent, but you'll see that if I play my kick up here, I'm going to solo my kick. Now you'll notice something right there. Look at what just happened. Okay, so right here between the spot right here, there is another kick playing on my regular kick drum, but there's no actual audio file on my silent kick, my sidechain kick. Right there. So sometimes I may not want every single kick that's actually happening in my kick drum. I may not want them all to affect my other instruments. For instance, let's say, for instance, you're doing kind of a rhythmic groove like this, and at the end of your phrase and your kicks, you may have almost a kick fill. something like that. That may not be a favorable effect in the sidechaining process if you're using it to sidechain out your bass, for instance. Now, every time that huge phrase hits, that long continual kick fill, when it hits, it may duck your bass down for so long that you literally have a big chunk of time that the bass is just gone. Or other instruments that you're sidechaining, they're just completely pulled out. And that might be an undesirable effect. I find that to be the case a lot. So that's why I run a secondary track that's silent. You don't hear it in the mix here, the sidechain kick track. I only sidechain out the spots that I really want that sound, the other sounds, to duck out. So in my actual track that I'm using right now as a sidechain track, I don't have those extra kicks there. So let me show you kind of how I approach the sidechain. So I'm going to show you my bass. Now I have a huge sidechain on this. You can hear that bass really kind of ramping back in every time. And I don't normally always sidechain that heavily, but in this particular song, I felt like it was working. Okay, obviously not quite as dramatic. So what I do is on my bass, I will put a compressor. In this case, I'm just using a little native compressor for Cubase. It does not matter which one you use. I also like the Waves compressor a lot. Anything I can create a sidechain with. In this particular case, my attack is very, very fast. As fast as I can go on this particular compressor. I don't worry about hold. A lot of compressors don't have that feature. That release is an opportunity to create another rhythmic element in your song. So you want it to be timed correctly. So the way I set that myself is I just use an old delay chart. So I can check my tempo here and look at the actual time, or that's measured in hertz. I can check it and see what I wanted to set based on the quarter note, eighth note, 16th, and so forth. Now, there are apps that you can insert and do that, or the websites that you can reference to you do that. I've just used this chart for years, so that's what I have. But what I do is I set my release time at a certain time based on my tempo. I don't always do it, but most of the time I do. I want to play my bass with and without the sidechain. So this is without. Pretty basic, right? Really it's just kind of a layer, almost a pad-like layer. But once I bring the sidechain into it, I'm running my threshold right now about 27. It's pretty hot. You can see that I'm really hitting the bass hard. Again, if you're using a compressor that has a mix, you'll want that to be pretty much all in. I have some other features on this compressor that do not matter. The makeup, I leave it alone. The analysis, none of that stuff really is important to me. That's why I say that almost any compressor you have that does allow you to sidechain, you should be able to lock it in and do it. In Cubase, the way I set that up is once I've put this compressor on my bass track, which is what we're looking at right here, right? Once I click this little button in right here, that means that this compressor now will show up as an option to sidechain on any other track. So in this one track here, this one that I've created, this my silent sidechain kick, you'll see that I have over here in my sends, this is where I set up my sidechains. If I click on this, I'll see an option down here for sidechain. So anything that I've got that's got a sidechain type of compressor on it, I can choose from here. My bass is called To The Point. Here it is right here, and I've got about minus 6 dB on that here. So I can control actually what goes into the compressor here. I can also control the amount of compression through the threshold directly on the compressor here. So once this is in, if I pull it out, so that's affecting that same compressor that's on the bass channel. Another important feature that I really love about using a separate silent sidechain kick track is the control you have over the sample itself. So in this case, I don't know how long this kick is. Let's see. Okay, the kick is actually this long. I'm using the same kick sample that I am using in my actual kick, but you'll notice that I've shortened it down. Why did I do that? I didn't want a super long kick. The longer my kick, the more time it's going to take for my ducking the sound to recover. So in this case, I've shortened my kicks down to just a little less than an eighth note in this case. Very quick. It allows me to have more control over the compressor and actually decide through my release time how much time I want my sound to be ducked down. So another great reason to set up a separate kick track. All right, so let me show you a couple other instruments that I feel were necessary to sidechain. Let me show you this one. This thing called Highline. This is just basically kind of an organy synth sound that I use. See, it's kind of got a bit of an organ sound to it. What I love about this sound, and I'm just using it as kind of a sort of a mids level pad. You don't necessarily hear it. It's not sticking out in a great way. So I just want to feel that kick just stand out. I really want my kick to have its own space when it hits. So those type of sounds I'm pulling out. So again, this is about how much I'm pulling it out if you hear it with the sidechain kick. It's sidechain pretty heavily. Running about 25 dB on this one. Minus 25 on the threshold. Now, I'm also sidechaining a little bit, a higher synth. I bring in this sort of string-like synth. Now that's pretty high up. There's no way that that's interfering with the kick, right? But it's still, if I sidechain that out a little bit, hear it? I'm creating sort of a pumping feel. I don't necessarily sidechain all my instrumentation out, but I sidechain enough out that I feel like the kick feels like it's really pushing everything back just slightly as it hits. And I'm able to do all of that without the kick being overly loud. You want your kick to have great presence. You want it to be fat and sit there right in the mix, but you don't want to find yourself having to turn the volume down to compensate for an overly loud kick. So doing this allows your kick to sit a little bit more in the mix. All right, you guys, until next time.